Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's had an amazing lunch and ready and prepared to get going. So, as they were saying during the introduction, this talk is about building startups. And it's somewhat difficult to give a title to. Like, what do you actually call it? So I went with building startups, minimum viable products, how you get going. Like at other conferences, it would be you talk about it, we ship it, which I think is a good one, especially when you consider how much of the software craftsmanship movement is going around. Or fundamentally, let's talk about just making some money. And that kind of sums up what this talk is about. So who am I? So I work in London. I'm a hacker in residence and a partner at a startup studio called Corner Shop. We basically build, buy, and invest in startup companies. So we build our own products and our own companies from our own ideas, but we also invest in third parties and invest at a seed and small angel rounds. Previous to that, I've done my own startup, Mere Catalyst and Mayday. They were semi-successful, and you'll hear about why they were successful and why maybe they failed and fall flat on their face later on. And then before that, Swap It, where I was the CTO, and other music companies, good software companies like Seven Digital, like Redgate. If anyone wants to reach out, got any questions, then feel free, reach out, email address, Twitter. Twitter's generally the best because I will actually respond. So, the agenda. I've broken it down into 3 distinct sections. First, we're going to talk about the idea. Right? How do you validate? How do you come up with these ideas about what you actually want to be building in the first place? Once you've got that, it's all about building it, getting it out there, constructing it in the first place, and then releasing it. Putting it out in a big, wide world, actually getting some users, and then hopefully making some money from it. And I will say, this is how I see the world. There may be some rants, there may be some things which you don't agree with, but this is how I see it. Hopefully, even if you're not planning to build a startup, you'll resonate with some of the ideas, maybe some of the features which you're working on in your own company, and you can take some of the concepts about how we validate, how we deal with customers, how we deal with users, and you can take that back into your own company and your own product, what you're working on. So, to start, the mindset. Startups, for me, are all about the mindset. You have to be ready, you have to be prepared, you have to want to do a startup in the first place. But what is a startup? It's quite a broad, vague term. And so for me, the startup mindset is all about being willing to validate or invalidate an idea as quickly as possible. You have to go in with a preparation. You have to go in with a mindset that is about proving yourself right, but in many ways, it's also about proving yourself wrong. If you can prove yourself wrong, then you've got something to learn. You've taken some lessons, and you can actually go and actually build upon that. If you never prove yourself wrong, then it's difficult to actually grow and actually build something which is valuable to people. And then you get into the whole process. Like at a very high level, it's just like the lean startup methodology. You build something, you do some metrics, you measure it, you take some lessons, you learn, you iterate, you rinse, you repeat. You go around in a circle, you keep doing that, and you just don't stop. It's quite a simple, high-level concept. In reality, it's an absolute pain in the ass. But like at a high level, it sounds easy, it sounds simple, just go on and do it. But being lean is not about being cheap. Many people go, oh, we're a lean startup, we don't spend any cash, we don't hire any developers, it's all free. Like, that's not the point. Like, so many people think that's the point about being lean. It's not about being cheap. It's about taking lessons and having the mindset of getting some lessons and taking some learnings. And as I was saying, it's good to fail, but don't spend 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 6 months, 12 months trying to figure it out. There's so many startups in London who are very happy to go, yeah, we're a startup. We've been working on it for 3 years. You released anything? We will do. We're building it. It's fine. It's like, how can you build something for 3 years and not release it to any customers and think you're a startup? Like, really? Honestly. Get it out there. It's good to fail, but as long as you do it in a quick, effective way. But there's a flip side to that. And I'm quite prone to doing this. It's like you fail so quickly, it's impossible to succeed. It's like, this is a great idea. Let's start building it. And then that lizard brain, that bit of your mind at the back goes, no one ever use it. No, people don't actually need this product. People don't actually need this idea. And so you instantly kill it without even actually putting it out there. And I've done so many open source projects, which I put it onto GitHub and then go, no one's ever going to use it, and that's it. I move on, and I go do something else. I never give it the chance to succeed in its first place because I've already assumed that it's going to fail. This is a bad mindset. You want to fail, but you want to make sure that you failed for the right reasons, and not because of fear, not because of doubt, and not because it gets a little bit scary. So for me, the best definition of a startup is a company that's confused. They're just fundamentally confused. They're confused about what the product actually is. They're confused about who the customers actually are. And fundamentally, they're really confused about how they're going to make some money. Once you've actually started nailing some of these, and you kind of move beyond the startup. If you know your product, if you know your customers, if you know how you're making money, like, you're a pretty well-established business at that point. You're pretty good. If you're still confused, I would say you're a startup. So that's a startup. So let's assume that you have an idea. How do you go about actually building it, and actually how do you turn that into something real? But many a time, you don't really have a clear idea. Sometimes you're like, I want to do something. I want to like fill that extra time. I want a little bit extra beer money. I want a bit of something else. I've got some passion. I've got some desire. This is a great way to actually start finding ideas. And this is how I came up with Mere Catalyst. It's a rubbish name. We'll get into that later. But fundamentally, it was a problem which we had at 7 Digital. Like, we needed a better way to deploy our .NET, ASP.NET applications. And I looked at it and went, there's not really a good solution out there, or there's not something which I would really want to use. So why don't I build it? And so it was kind of like quite simple. Stuck up a landing page, and it actually got some traction. It got some people willing to pay for it, and like that's all it took. It's like a personal problem. Gave me an idea. I just ran with it. And there's other companies like BetaWorks, which own Dig. They own Dots, which is the big iOS game. They own Instapaper. They just look at themes. They look at verticals, and they go, you know what? We're going to focus on quantified self. We're going to focus on mobile. We're going to focus on social. And they'll just find problems within those spaces and explore them. Same with ScienceInc. ScienceInc are a very, very big startup studio. And I like them. They're really cool. They do some really cool, interesting stuff. But they just look at a vertical. They look at a problem area, something which they have experience in, and go, can we do something interesting in that space? It's a great way, if you don't have a clear idea, just kind of look at a problem, look at something which you're vaguely attached to, and just speak to people. Find problems, find maybe areas which are untouched, then explore them. Rocket Internet are slightly different. Based out of Berlin, stupidly big company. They're doing something like 3 billion in revenues a year. What they do is they look at a startup, and they go, can we take that startup and can we do it in another area? Like, can we take something which is huge in the US or North America, and can we take it to the Middle East? Same business model, same approach, same infrastructure, just clone it, drop it into another vertical and another market, and see if it works equally as well. They're doing 3 billion in revenue. And like, I'm going to say it's working for them. It's working pretty well. But fundamentally, you have to believe in the vision. You have to believe in what you're setting out to achieve. Huddle, for example, set out to achieve building a better SharePoint. After one too many costly installs of SharePoint, it was like, there must be a better way. There must be something else. There must be another opportunity there. They got sick and tired of SharePoint, and so they built their own cloud-based Office collaboration. And it's really, really successful. Playfish, which were a social gaming company, set out to kill EA, the big, massive game studio. It's like, you know what? These guys are big, they're old, they're dinosaurs. We want to kill it. We want to take them on. We want to beat them at their own game. Ironically, EA just acquired them. So I'm not quite sure whether they did beat them at their own game, but they made a lot of money in the first place. But you have to have this clear vision. You have to have something which you want to achieve. If it's kill something else, that's better. Because you know when you're successful, and you've got something which you can aim for. It's great. Because fundamentally, people don't buy what you actually do. They buy why you do it. And this is why cloning is really hard. This is why Dell will never be able to make a laptop equally as good as Apple. Because Apple have this core fundamental concept about why they build amazing products. Dell don't have that. Dell are focused on making money. They're focused on shareholders. That's their core proposition. And so what they do is just build a laptop which solves that problem. Apple want to build amazing, beautiful pieces of hardware. That's why people love Apple. That's why people are on board. Fundamentally, they buy why you do it. You have to have this core understanding of why. And fundamentally, it's easier to go from something and build something which is great than have nothing and try to get to great. If you've got an idea, it fundamentally is easier just to start running in a direction. Doesn't matter what direction, just run with it. Figure it out on the way. If you just ponder it, which I'm used to be really bad at, you sit there and you think, maybe X, maybe Y, maybe Z, and you never get started, it's really, really hard to actually build it into something great. Once you get started, it's actually surprisingly simple. And that's what we do at Corner Shop. So at Corner Shop, we've got a process which we run through, and how we take some like big idea and some big vision and actually break it down and actually how we start working with it. So we've got an exercise called business assumptions exercise. And so let's assume that we've got an idea. Doesn't matter what it is. So in this case, it's doorknobs and door handles and door furniture. And if I bring up the document, that's going to be awesome. Yeah, that whole dual monitor's not really working for me. Anyway, so we've got an exercise which basically we just go through a series of questions. And so we just try and actually make it a bit more discrete, a bit more concrete in our own minds, and something which we can actually start talking about. So for example, we believe a customer has a need to do something. Like, it's quite a simple question, but actually, it's actually really hard to solve if you don't have it clear in your own head. So by writing it down, making it discrete, making it concrete, you actually start thinking through it and you actually start processing it. Then you go through, you say, these problems need to be solved by blah. My initial customers will be X. That's where it starts getting really difficult, because you go, initial customers, that could be everyone on the internet, obviously. That's somewhat broad, somewhat ambitious, and so you have to start breaking it down. You have to start questioning your initial reasoning and questioning what you're actually doing. This is where it starts becoming valuable, because you have your initial things, you document them, you document the learnings, and it's like, right, we've now got a foundation, we've now got a set of assumptions which we're working with. We can build on that. It gets really interesting when you start going further down and you're going, what are the biggest product risks? What are the things which will actually kill the company if they turn out not to be true? Because at this point, everything is built on assumptions. You don't actually know whether it's true or not. You're just documenting what you actually think is the case. So the biggest product risk in this one is, do people actually buy door furniture online? Now we know they kind of do. We know people do buy door furniture, but in what volume did my initial customer set actually do that in the first place? So you start going through this process and you kind of build up an idea. We then break it down into something called the business model canvas. It's got a big A4 sheet of paper. We just document what we think. We're brainstorming at this stage. We're just going, right, our initial customer segment will be blah. We think the value proposition for this idea will be this. Bring it on. So, for example, this is Zynga at a very high level, which are cloned. But it's like casual gamers are their customer segment, which is true. They think they need free-to-play and mindless entertainment, social interaction. They just start bringing all the different pieces together, and then you could just have an overview of what the company might look like going forward. This overview is just really good to concrete, segment the idea, and actually bring it more from just in your head to something which is more real, more realistic. At this point, we generally leave the building. A lot of the time we go to the pub, but eventually we go out and talk to some actual customers. And it's understanding what people are actually doing, how people would actually engage with the product in the first place. So we take the doorknobs and door handles, which is what we were working on last week, hence why I'm using it as the example. We just wanted to understand who is actually the customers going out and buying these. What are competitors? How do people solve this problem in the first place? And so we spoke to many different people. We spoke to the leading shops, we spoke to leading suppliers, anyone who could vaguely give us any kind of insight. We went out and we reached, and we spoke to them. And we always talked about it in the present, or in their previous experiences. Because fundamentally, people are rubbish at going, oh yeah, in the future, of course I'm going to buy it online, because everything's online. Of course I'm going to use mobile, because everything's on my mobile. You actually break it down, they will never do that. They say they will do one thing, they do something completely opposite. So we always try and talk in the past. We always try and use previous experiences, like, what was the last time you bought it? What was the last time, how did you approach it then? Because then, it's a concrete example. You're not making things up, you're not making them think, it's concrete. And always listen to users, customers, the people who will actually do it. Never listen to advisors and VCs. Like, they're a good sounding board, and definitely reach out and have the conversation, but a VC will say one thing, but that's their own point of view, that's their own mindset. It's very easily to be swayed and think that they're maybe know more than what they think they know, but put too much weight and too much emphasis on what they're saying. This is what we did with Mere Catalyst. It was a great idea. People need a better way to deploy .NET applications. It's like, we had 500 people screaming at us going, yes, we want this product. We spoke to advisors and VCs and like, you know what? People don't really need to solve that. People don't need that problem in their lives. It's not a big enough problem. It's not big enough. Never going to make any money. It's like, really? I'm pretty sure those 500 people are like a good proof point. Advisors, VCs, like, no. Hence, we killed it. Stupid, stupid mistake. Like, we listened to people who we thought were better and thought more experienced and more knowledgeable and ignored our users. It's like, damn. So, listen to the people who are actually going to pay you, not the people around you. And once you've done all this, just keep iterating. Keep going back, learn, lessons, update. We constantly keep updating our business model canvas, updating our assumptions, iterating, building, going forward. And let's assume that you've got some people interested. You're kind of going to need a name. Right? You're going to need to call it something. I hate naming. It sucks the life out of me. It's really painful, like days to come up with a name. You come up with something really cool and really sexy, and then the .com's taken. It's like, damn, I'm going to have to rinse and repeat. And there's two ways to name it. Like Mere Catalyst, as I was saying, awful, awful name. I think, I can't remember how, I think I was watching a TV advert and it had meerkats. And I was like, that's really cool. Like, I'll just add that onto another random word. Like, that will work. Mayday, which was another startup, better. It's clearer, it's more discreet. It's getting there. And there's two kind of ways which you can do branding and do naming. You can take a random word, like Google, Spotify, Apple, and turn it into something meaningful, which is what we're doing with Corner Shop. You can then take the other approach, which is actually be more explanational and kind of describe what your actual product does, i.e. Airbnb, Ryanair, YouPorn. Like, you can't really go wrong. You kind of know what you're getting on the tin. It does, however, make it really hard to change what the business does. Like, you can't go from being an adult website to being like a car insurance website. Like, that branding is not really going to work. But people know what they're getting. But a personal hate, which I was at a open space big conference a couple of weeks ago, is everyone pitching to me and everyone talking to me saying they're disrupting, they're innovating education, they're disrupting car insurance, they're disrupting something. Like, how? Like, you can't say you're disrupting, you can't say you're innovating. It's just fundamentally lame. Like, other people can say you're doing that, and other people can say that you're changing the world, i.e. Tesla with their cars, Apple with their hardware, but you can't come out and go, yeah, we're doing that. We're confident. We're going to change the world. Like, it just makes you sound stupid. And I've just got personal hate, and everyone did it at this conference. It was all about social innovation, and everyone wanted to change the world. It's like, just no. Let other people do it. Let other people be those spokespeople. And then you've got this idea, so you've spoken to loads of people, you've got all of this interesting information. Like, you think you're actually onto a winner. You think you're onto something good. Sadly, it only gets you so far. You start running out, like, you start asking questions, but then you want different answers. Like, you need to know more information. That only gets you to a point. This is where you actually have to build something. So, what is a minimum viable product? So this was a really good definition. I think this is the best one we've heard. An experiment that tests a critical, falsifiable hypothesis of your business. So something critical, essential. Like, you want to be testing the most important part of what you're actually doing. If it's not important, then who actually cares? And you need to be able to prove yourself wrong. Like, if you're just going to prove yourself right, then what's the point? What's the lessons you're trying to learn from that? Like, you need to be able to be proven wrong or proven wrong, because then if you can't be proven wrong, there's nothing to learn. You're always going to be right. And like, I've seen this, like, they start with some really simple, really easy idea. It's like, will people sign up? Or like, will people log in? Or like, just stupid things. It's like, who cares about log in? Like, get people using the core functionality. Get people using the core idea about what you're trying to achieve, and not this fluff around the edge. And a lot of the time, I just kind of fake it. It's fine. It's fine. It doesn't really need to work a lot. You just kind of go with it. So, for example, Rate It Slate It was a new platform for children to discover new trends. So new clothing, new videos on YouTube, new apps. Like, it's a new way to engage and do it. And then they could go in, they could rate it, and they could slate it. Turns out kids love slating stuff. Who would have thought? Especially Justin Bieber. And you know what? We didn't actually know what the kids would do in the first place. It was like, it's a bit vague, it's a bit, like, how do you actually want to do it? And we had this idea, like, would kids engage with the product more if they could earn points and if they could actually have this kind of point virtual currency system? And I could have built it, and I could have kind of made it work, but it would have taken maybe 3-4 days. It's like, it's just boring. I just don't want to build it. Like, I'm not sure if it's actually going to add any value. So I just faked it. I gave kids some random point. When they did something, a counter updated. It was all stored in Redis. It was pretty simple. Like, job done. Took 2-3 hours. It wasn't the core functionality. It wasn't actually what we were trying to achieve, but it kind of got the message across, and it had all the right feel to it. And it was good. We figured out that, no, people don't change their behavior if they get points. Right? We could have went down, we could have took a long lesson, we could have went down a path which no one actually cared about and spent dev time, spent money, investment, or we could have just went, you know what, let's just fake it. And that's what we do. I don't like writing code, fundamentally. I used to love it. I used to be this amazing developer who bash code out every single opportunity, but now, you know what? If I don't have to write code, that means I don't have to actually invest any money, don't have to invest any time. It means I can actually get on and do something more interesting, like Twitter. And email and blog-first startups are actually really cool at the moment. So Sunrise is like a calendar application. And it was just an email which you used to get every single day. Start of the day, just emailed you your calendar, emailed you things like the weather, some more context about the location, little bits. They went on and raised 2.2 million. It started off an email. They've now got a beautiful iPhone application, they've got a beautiful website, it's very cool, it's very sexy. But you don't have to start out doing that, you just have to start simple. Mattermark is an email newsletter which I get every week. And it just says, what's the hottest startups? That's what they did. That's all they do. It started out as 2 blog posts. She aggregated the data, she got it together, she put it into a blog post, put it on Hacker News, and everyone loved it. At that point, she realized she was onto something interesting. She was onto a winner. You don't get that much traction without someone actually caring about that data. They're now insanely successful. They're growing really, really good. Because fundamentally, it's about speed of delivery. How quickly you can get something out the door and prove whether you're right or wrong. A lot of the time, beg, steal, borrow. No, there's a lot of code out there. There's a lot of questions on Stack Overflow. You don't really have to write code that much anymore. You can just put it all together. And we got this from, which I've deeming Project X, because I'm not actually allowed to talk about it. But fundamentally, we had an idea, we knew something, and we just ran with it. We just took it. It's like, we know this is going to work. And so we just went and chased the money. Admittedly, we did make some money out of it, but as a result, we just skipped things. Like, we skipped actually engaging with customers in the first place. We skipped a lot of the stuff which we were talking about, because like, oh yeah, we know what the customers want. We know what they need. We know how they're going to engage. We know how they're going to use the product. We missed a lot of opportunities. We missed a lot of commercial opportunities because we just was like focused on making money and not actually on banking lessons and taking them on board. Because fundamentally, life is too short. We want to be working on interesting stuff. So this is why I kind of fake it. So I use things like Webflow and Strikingly. And they're kind of like drag and drop. I used to hate drag and drop interfaces. Like when Visual Studio came out and everyone like promoting drag and drop, it's like, that is god awful. Like that's going to produce some god ugly code. Why would anyone actually do it? I've kind of changed my opinion on that one now. I'm now back on board with drag and drop. The HTML which these guys produce is actually pretty good. And the design is much better than what I can achieve in the first place. And you know what? It looks pretty beautiful. And I can do this in an hour, and I don't need a designer. Instead of going down, having a designer, getting them to engage, and kind of like, it's just going to be painful. So I can do it myself. If it's iPhone, there's something called proto.io. Like you can build an entire iPhone application just through drag and drop. It's got all the core templates. It's got all the core components. You can even install it as a web application, so it looks and feels like the real thing. But you don't actually have to write any code. This is great for just kind of like experimenting and trying to get the user flow and trying to get everything sorted and trying to get everything nailed. If people actually engage and if people actually like it, then it's a great point that you can actually invest and you actually go on and you develop it. If you do really need to build it, Foundation is great. It's like Bootstrap, but it's cleaner, the UI is prettier, it doesn't look like Twitter, which every single website at the moment looks like Twitter because everyone's building on top of Bootstrap. So Foundation, it's cool. But fundamentally, when you start building and you start going a bit lower, like Ember, Backbone, all of these cool, fancy JavaScript frameworks, like, do you really need all of that technology? Or can you just actually write some JavaScript and get on and solve the problem what you're trying to solve in the first place? Like, so many people go, oh yeah, sexy new framework. I need to build it. I need to use that technology because it's sexy and it's new. It's like, no, start focusing on building something which is actually valuable and not on playing with shiny new technology. Having said that, a lot of it is building on the shoulders of other people. So like things like Node.js. Node.js is amazing just because of the community. Like there is so many packages out there. There is so much available that I don't actually have to write any code when I'm trying to solve the problem. Everything which I need to get done is already there. It's already waiting. Someone else has solved that problem. Means I can just go on and do it. Elasticsearch, another amazing technology. I can just throw in data, and it just does it. Like I can search, I can store, I can retrieve everything which I need to do out the box. And I don't have to worry about it. Just works. Don't have complex migrations, I don't have complex installations. Fundamentally works, which means I can actually do things a lot quicker. If you need data, like there's a lot of APIs out there. Foursquare is amazing for locations. It's an open API. Like you can just go on, if you need a location, if you need coffee shops, restaurants, they've already got that data and they're opening up for free. If you don't have that data, then screen scrape it. I'm a great fan of screen scraping. It's a bit dirty, it's a bit hacky, it's a bit naughty, but there's a lot of data out there and a lot of valuable information which I want access to in my applications, which I just kind of want, well, I want access to it, I want access to it now, I'll get it. Reverse engineering hidden APIs. Like every single iPhone application, he's got an API there. Just hook it in, do some little bit of proxying, track some traffic, you can figure it out. So for example, the Jawbone quantified south devices, I wanted access to people's data. I wanted access to that raw information. It's like, well, you know what? I can't do the device itself because that's really complex to reverse engineer. But the application is talking to the website constantly on my iPhone. Maybe I can just sit in the middle. Maybe I can just watch the traffic. Maybe I can just see what that's doing. Like 2 hours later, I had the entire API at my fingertips and all of the data which I needed just through using it. It's not official, it's not nice, it's not pretty, but it works. And then I can build on top of it. But fundamentally, it's about keeping it simple, keeping it dirty, just doing what's required to actually make some money. Some things which I have got burnt about recently, Heroku. Like, everyone loves it. I've gone off it. I'm not a fan anymore. Like, it's simple to deploy. It's simple, quick, easy. But you know what? It's slow. It's really, really slow. So I was speaking with Paul Stack. That's Paul, right there. Green T-shirt. Fundamentally, hard man to find a picture for. Really, really hard man. And he told me about Vagrant. And it's beautiful. He showed me a demo on his laptop. Like, I could spin up an entire EC2 or Rackspace box, install all of my stuff, deploy all of my applications, and it just fundamentally worked. It's like a quicker, faster, more flexible version of Heroku. It's wonderful. I fell in love instantly. So then we go into code quality. So let's say you've got it built, you've got it deployed. We now go into, like, surely doing all of this hacky stuff, reverse engineering APIs, like screen scraping, it's dirty. Like Uncle Bob told us we should be producing clean code. I don't believe that anymore. I used to be a strong promoter of TDD, used to be a strong promoter of actually writing pure, simple, clean code. Like, fundamentally now, I just think it's a bit crap. Like, you don't have to produce clean code to solve the problem. Like, fundamentally, if you're not making any sales, who cares? If you're not making any money from the application, it doesn't matter if your application is built to the highest quality with 100% code coverage and everyone can refactor and change it. Because, like, no one's using it. Like, maybe focus on the key issue that you have no users and you have no money than how clean your actual code is. And I do strongly believe, having been one of these developers, that if my salary, if my job actually was dependent upon the cash flow and the revenue of the business, then I probably wouldn't have spent that 10 days refactoring that piece of code, which added no value to the user. But it was a piece of art at the end of it. It's beautiful. I loved it. It used all the right patterns, it was testable, it's like inversion of control. It's amazing. Spent 10 days and it made no money for the company. Like, really? So I stopped. Don't do TDD. It's just not. I wrote a book on testing and I just don't do it anymore. But what I do is try and reduce my feedback loops. I want feedback about whether it's working right or wrong. TDD is not the way to do that. Hacky shell scripts, hacky kind of like quick kind of like browser automation. I can get some feedback and can know whether it's working right or wrong without having to go through a big lengthy process and think like TDD. It's just painful. Because you know what? Don't be scared to throw away code. Like if it's rubbish, just rewrite it. Like generally, I've found in my experience, it's cheaper to rewrite it from scratch, take the lessons and take the understanding of that code and start again than trying to mold that piece of mud into something which is actually valuable. Because a lot of time, you just don't want to be a developer. Like, there's this developer mindset, and it's not the mindset which you want if you're building a startup, if you're working on a new idea, or if you're trying to make some money. I did this with Mere Catalyst. It's a deployment system. And yet we kind of hooked in some end service bursts, we hooked in some big complex databases, we had some Redis in there. Like, it was over-engineered. It was a waste of time, shall we say. Like, it didn't need to be the big complex system when a shell script would have solved the actual problem and actually proved whether we was actually onto something which is successful or not. I then did it with Mayday. Like, you would assume now I would have taken the lessons, taken that understanding from my first project, and done it again. But no. Built something which was massive. It was a data analytics platform, a bit similar to Google Analytics or Mixpanel. I introduced HBase because, you know what? I need to scale. Facebook uses HBase, so I need to scale. I'm going to use HBase. At this point, I was collecting like 1 million records a day. Didn't need something capable of doing 1 billion rows. It was just stupid. Wasted so much time because I was in a developer mindset. I wanted to use something which was cool, sexy, and different, not actually solving the problem at hand. Because like, you want to do things which move the needle. You want to do things which have an impact, have a change. If it's not going to move the needle, if it's not going to add value, then what's the point? You want to, and this is fundamentally like whether you're building a startup, whether you're building software. Everything that has to add value to the company. If you're not adding value, then question why you're actually doing it in the first place. So let's assume you've now got this beautiful piece of code. It may be a bit hacky, it may not work fundamentally, but it's kind of got some lessons to it. So you want to get it out there, you want to release it, you actually want to push it out and see what people actually think. But that's simple, you know. Hollywood told us that if you build something, then people will just naturally come. It just works. That's just how life is. Sadly, I've tried that. Really doesn't work well. Sadly, you need to put some effort. And this is where I actually find it more difficult. I'm not a natural marketeer. I'm not a natural salesperson. So this whole releasing bit was like, meh. So what do? Well, at this point, it's time to listen. It's time to listen to what your application's doing. It's time to listen to what your metrics are saying. It's time to listen to what your customers are saying. You want to sit back and just kind of watch it. So in terms of metrics, collect everything. Like, stupid amount of data. Because you never know when it will be interesting. You never know what will actually be important. And you never know what queries you need to run. So we use Libretto, which is just like a nice visualization, a nice little dashboard and collection agent. We had a Windows service. Every now and again, maybe every minute and every 5 minutes, it'd query the database, ping all the metrics back up to the system, and we had beautiful, pretty graphs like this. Some of it was CPU usage, memory usage, hard disk usage to make sure the servers were running. But the other side was health metrics about the application. What was it doing? What were the users doing? Were people signing up? Were people actually engaging in the way which we actually thought they would be? It's a nice little overview. It's the same with user events. Now, you want to track everything. Stick it into Mixpanel, stick it into Google Analytics, and you can actually start understanding what people are doing with your application. It also has a nice bonus that, you know what, they actually tell you when you break something. Like, I may not test my code, but I've got enough metrics around it that I know if it's broken or not. And so you find other ways to solve that problem. You find other ways to deal with the issue. If people soon drop off and stop signing up, then that means I've either made a coding error or the change has completely killed my metrics application. Either way, I kind of want to revert it. That's all I need to know. Feedback, quick, instant feedback. Then it comes down to Mini. So there's a concept called pirate metrics, mainly because it's R. And it kind of works, but it's acquisition, activation, revenue, retention, and referral rates. And fundamentally, they're the 5 key metrics which any company should be focusing on. You get it down in a nice simple graph like this, like how many people are coming to the website? How many people are then having a happy first visit? How many people are doing what you expect them to do in the first place? You can then do retention, like do they actually come back? Do they tell other people? Do they actually spend some money on your website? If you're not tracking this, then like your business is going to not probably, like, these are the key essentials. If this does not work, your company and your software and your startup is not going to really work. Companies and startups need these essential things within their lives. So driving traffic, simple. Just get some PR, you know, like get some people to write about it. Sadly, that's more complex than what you would think. So that generally we buy traffic. So we do pay-per-click, Google, Twitter, Facebook. We buy traffic as a way to prove whether the company and the idea is actually kind of viable or not. It's not the cheapest of ways, but it's quick and it's effective. Things like SEO are great for long-term growth, but you can't do an SEO campaign overnight. It just doesn't work like that. Email is still king. Email still converts the best. People may say it doesn't work, and Google, with their new tabs, are trying to make that one happen, but fundamentally, email converts the best. Other ways, you can just piggyback off other people's traffic. So PayPal, when they launched, did a big, massive thing about if we're going to succeed, we need eBay to be one of our main sources of users. So you know what? They built a bot which brought a load of items from the biggest eBay sellers. The biggest eBay sellers would then go, oh, we need to pay. And they'd go, oh, use PayPal. This would be a real user, well, fake user, but acting as a real user, going, we want to use PayPal. And then the users would naturally move on to the PayPal platform. People would know about it. People would be aware. And they just did it through fake listings and fake eBay auctions. Turns out eBay then liked it. People got on board and eBay bought PayPal eventually. Kind of worked as a strategy. Airbnb did the same thing with Craigslist. You list something on Airbnb, it automatically got posted to Craigslist because that's where all the traffic and that's where all the behavior was originally. They then used Craigslist as a traffic source to Airbnb, took them from a god-awful looking website into something beautiful, and what? People stopped using Craigslist. People stayed where they were actually happy. Speak to people, it's essential. You're already doing customer development. The Red Gate UX team are amazing at this. They will watch people, they will monitor it, they'll record videos, they share it with the team. They are amazing. And that's kind of what you need to do. You need to see how people are engaging and how people are interacting. Reportive is great for qualifying leads. Like, is this person interesting? Is he interesting to me? Is he a customer which I could potentially use? Just from their email address. You then get their Twitter, you get their LinkedIn, you know how important they are. If it's just a spam, you bin it, you don't care. If it turns out to be a CEO of an uber cool company, you give them a call. You jump on that lead straight away. At Redgate, or certain other companies, we found there was a massive drop-off from the time of people actually submitting to how quickly you engage with them. Like, there's a direct correlation to whether they actually paid for the software and paid and converted into a real customer. And I've seen this in multiple companies. You want to jump on that lead as quickly as possible to get feedback. What you don't want to be doing is A/B tests. Everyone says, let's do A/B testing. We're not sure whether A or B will be right, so let's do them both. My God, it's a pain in the ass. It's just over-complex, it's a waste of time, and generally you don't have enough traffic for it to be a massive impact one way or another. It works if you're Zynga and you've got millions and millions of users, but if you've only got 1,000, it's pointless. You will not learn anything. It's easier just to iterate, release 2 different versions, and watch the metrics. Don't bother using A/B testing software. So, with all that in mind, as I said at the beginning, it's easier just to start something and iterate on top of it. If you've got an idea, if you've got a passion, do it. Jump on board, execute. Like, there's a lot of platforms now, and there's a lot of lessons, and it's not that difficult to start. And focus on delivering value. If you can deliver value, then things actually happen. Many startups fail because they're building something which they think is cool and sexy, but there's no value to a real user. Build something which you think is going to make someone's life better, make someone's life different, and then get feedback. If it's not working, change it. If it's really not working, kill it. Right? We've killed multiple ideas. We killed 3 ideas last week. That was a little bit painful. But like, it just happens. That's life. That's startups. Working on something which is not cool, not sexy, is soul destroying. Right? There's more important things in life than be working on a crappy, rubbish startup which no one is using. Go build something valuable, go build something exciting, and build something which is cool and sexy. With that in mind, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening. And if you've got any questions, then I'll be around all the rest of the day.